When successful tech CEO Marcus Wellington fires his longtime housekeeper Elena Rodriguez over a minor mistake, he expects it to be just another business decision. But Elena's unexpected response and the revelations that follow force Marcus to confront the emptiness of his wealthy but isolated life, leading him on a journey of redemption that will challenge everything he thought he knew about success, family, and what truly matters. Jacinda, behind the crystal wine glass, shattered against the marble floor of my penthouse, sending shards across the pristine white tiles. I stood there, my hands trembling with a rage that had been building for months, staring at the mess that somehow represented everything wrong with my life at that moment. "Elena," I shouted, my voice echoing through the empty hallways of my Manhattan apartment. "Elena!" I could hear her hurried footsteps coming from the kitchen, and within seconds, she appeared in the doorway. Elena Rodriguez had been my housekeeper for 8 years, a small, dignified woman in her 50s, with graying hair always pulled back in a neat bun and eyes that held more wisdom than most people I knew. But right then, all I could see was another employee who had failed me. "Mr. Wellington, what happened? Are you hurt?" she asked, genuine concern in her voice as she looked at the broken glass around my bare feet. "What happened?" I repeated, my voice rising. "What happened is that I specifically told you yesterday that the Hartman Industries representatives were coming for dinner tonight. I told you to use the good china, the Waterford crystal, everything perfect. And what do I find when I come home?" Elena's face went pale. "Sir, the dining table is set with everyday dishes. The silver isn't polished. The flowers you arranged look like they came from a gas station." I was pacing now, gesturing wildly. "Do you have any idea how much this deal means to me? How much money is on the line?" "Mr. Wellington, please let me explain." "No," I cut her off. "I'm tired of explanations. I'm tired of incompetence. I pay you well, Elena. Very well, and in return I expect perfection. That's how business works. That's how life works." She stood there, taking my verbal assault without flinching, which somehow made me angrier. I had been under incredible pressure for weeks. The Hartman deal was worth $200 million, enough to secure my company's position as the leading AI technology firm on the East Coast. My board of directors had been breathing down my neck. My investors were getting nervous, and my ex-wife Sarah's lawyers were still circling like vultures over our divorce settlement. "I've been more than patient with you," I continued, my voice cold now. "The missed details, the small mistakes, but this is unacceptable." Eleanor finally spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "Mr. Wellington, my grandson Miguel was in the hospital yesterday. He was hit by a car while riding his bicycle to school. I had to leave early to be with my daughter, and I don't want to hear it," I said, cutting her off with a wave of my hand. "Personal problems don't excuse professional failures. I have a business to run, a reputation to maintain." The look in her eyes shifted then. The warmth that had always been there, even when I was difficult, seemed to dim. She straightened her shoulders and looked at me directly. "You're right, Mr. Wellington. You do have a business to run." "Finally," I muttered, bending down to pick up the larger pieces of glass. "Now, can you please get this cleaned up and reset the table properly? The Hartman people will be here in 2 hours and—" "No." I froze, a shard of crystal halfway to the trash can. "Excuse me." I said, "No, Mr. Wellington. I won't be cleaning this up. I won't be setting your table. I won't be here when your important business people arrive." I stood up slowly, not sure I had heard correctly. "Are you refusing to do your job?" Elena reached into her apron pocket and pulled out her keyring, the keys to my apartment, my car, my office building. She set them carefully on the kitchen counter. "I'm not refusing to do my job," she said, her voice still calm. "I'm quitting." The word hit me like a physical blow. In my 38 years, through building a multi-million-dollar company from nothing, through a brutal divorce, through every challenge I had faced, no one had ever just quit on me. People got fired, sure. People got bought out or pushed aside, but no one walked away. "You can't quit," I said, and I could hear the disbelief in my own voice. "Not today. Not with everything I have riding on tonight." "I can, and I am," Elena replied. "I have worked for you for 8 years, Mr. Wellington. 8 years of early mornings and late nights. 8 years of making sure your life runs smoothly while you build your empire. And in all that time, do you know what I've learned about you?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. "You have everything a man could want," she continued. "Money, success, a beautiful home, respect in your industry, but you have nothing that matters. No family that calls just to say hello. No friends who come by without wanting something from you. No one who cares whether you're happy or just surviving." "That's enough," I said, but my voice lacked its earlier force. No, it's not enough. It's not nearly enough. Elena picked up her purse from the counter. My grandson is lying in a hospital bed with a broken leg and a concussion, scared and in pain. And yesterday when I got that phone call, do you know what my first thought was? Not about Miguel's injuries, not about my daughter's tears. It was about whether you would fire me for leaving early. She paused at the doorway and turned back to face me. That's when I realized that working for you has cost me more than just my time. It's cost me pieces of my soul. And no amount of money is worth that. Elena, wait. But she was already walking toward the elevator, her footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness of my apartment. As the elevator doors closed behind her, I found myself alone among the broken glass and the silence, with 2 hours until the most important dinner of my career and no idea how to put any of it back together. The Hartman Industries dinner was a complete disaster. I spent 45 minutes frantically trying to clean up the broken glass, reset the table with whatever dishes I could find, and make myself presentable. When James Hartman and his team arrived, I was still sweating, my shirt wrinkled, and my usually perfect penthouse looked like a hurricane had swept through it. "Marcus, are you feeling all right?" James asked as I fumbled with the wine opener, my hands still shaking from the confrontation with Elena. "Just a long day," I lied, finally managing to pour the wine without spilling it everywhere. "You know how it is." But I could see the concern in his eyes, the way his associates exchanged glances when they thought I wasn't looking. These were people who valued precision, control, excellence, and I was falling apart in front of them. During dinner, I tried to focus on the presentation, on the numbers that should have been dancing in my head, on the future of my company, but all I could think about was Elena's words echoing in the empty spaces of my apartment. "You have nothing that matters." "The AI integration protocols you've developed are impressive," James was saying, but his voice seemed to be coming from very far away. "However, we need to discuss the implementation timeline." I nodded, smiled, said the right words, but my mind kept drifting. When was the last time someone had called me just to say hello? When was the last time I had a conversation that wasn't about business, money, or deals? The evening limped to its conclusion with handshakes and promises to be in touch soon, but I could feel the deal slipping away with every awkward moment. As soon as the elevator doors closed behind them, I collapsed onto my couch and stared at the ceiling. My phone buzzed. Sarah, my ex-wife. "Marcus, we need to talk about the custody arrangement for next month." "Can't this wait?" I asked, exhaustion creeping into my voice. "No, it can't. Jennifer has a school play, and your weekend with her conflicts with the rehearsal schedule. She wants to know if you can switch weekends." Jennifer, my 8-year-old daughter. When was the last time I had actually talked to her? Not just about scheduling, but about her day, her dreams, her fears. "Of course," I said. "Whatever works for Jennifer." There was a pause on the other end. "Marcus, are you okay? You sound—" "I'm fine, Sarah, just tired." "When was the last time you slept, really slept?" The question caught me off guard. "I sleep. Passing out at your desk doesn't count as sleeping." Her voice had softened, losing its usual edge. "Look, I know we have our issues, but Jennifer worries about you. She asked me the other day why Daddy always looks sad." The words hit me harder than Eleanor's resignation. "She said that? She's 8, Marcus. She notices things. She notices that you're never really present, even when you're with her. She notices that you check your phone during our conversations. She notices that you don't laugh anymore." After I hung up, I found myself walking through my apartment, really looking at it for the first time in years. It was beautiful, perfectly decorated, worth more than most people's houses, but it felt like a museum. Cold, untouchable, empty of any real life. I went to my bedroom and opened the drawer where I kept personal items. There, beneath some old documents, I found a photo from Jennifer's 6th birthday party. She was laughing, chocolate cake smeared on her face, and I was genuinely smiling, not the practiced smile I wore for business meetings, but a real one. I looked happy. When had I stopped being happy? My phone rang again. This time it was David Chen, my business partner, and the closest thing I had to a friend. "Marcus, I heard the Hartman meeting didn't go well." News travels fast. James called me directly. "He's concerned about your state of mind. He asked if everything was okay with you personally." I sank into my chair. "My housekeeper quit today." "Elena, why?" "Because—" I started to explain, but the words stuck in my throat. How could I tell David that I had been so cruel to a woman who had dedicated 8 years of her life to taking care of me? How could I explain that I had fired her for caring more about her injured grandson than my dinner party? "Because I'm an asshole," I finally said. David was quiet for a moment. "What happened?" I told him everything. The broken glass, my rage, Eleanor's quiet dignity, her final words to me. As I spoke, I could hear how petty and heartless I sounded. Jesus, Marcus. Eleanor's been with you since before your divorce. She's practically family. That's just it, David. She was family, more family than I have with my actual family. And I threw her away over some dishes. So fix it. How? Apologize. Make it right. You're good at solving problems. Solve this one. After David hung up, I sat in my living room until the sun came up, thinking about Elena's words. She was right about everything. I had money, success, respect in my industry, but when was the last time someone was genuinely happy to see me? When was the last time someone missed me when I was gone? I thought about my parents who had died in a car accident 5 years ago. My father had built a small construction business from nothing, worked with his hands, knew every employee by name, went to their kids' weddings and graduations. People loved him. At his funeral, grown men cried, not because they had lost an employer, but because they had lost a friend. What would people say at my funeral? That I was successful? That I was driven? That I made a lot of money? As the morning light streamed through my floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the empty spaces of my perfect apartment, I realized that Elena hadn't just quit her job. She had held up a mirror, and I didn't like what I saw reflected in it. If this part of the story is making you think about the important people in your own life, tell me from which place in the world you're listening to this story. Sometimes we need to hear about someone else's mistakes to recognize our own. I picked up my phone and started searching for Elena Rodriguez's contact information. It was time to do something I hadn't done in years. Admit I was wrong. Finding Elena turned out to be harder than I expected. I realized with growing shame that in 8 years, I had never once asked for her home address, never inquired about her family beyond polite small talk, never bothered to learn anything real about the woman who had quietly managed my entire life. I started with my assistant, Rebecca, calling her at 7 in the morning. "Mr. Wellington, is everything okay?" she answered, clearly surprised to hear from me so early. "I need Elena Rodriguez's home address and phone number. It should be in our employee files." "Sir, Elena only worked part-time, remember? She was paid as an independent contractor. We don't have personal information on file beyond her work phone number, which I believe was her cell. I had tried that number a dozen times already. It went straight to voicemail and the mailbox was full. Rebecca, I need you to find her. Hire a private investigator if you have to. Check public records, social media, anything." There was a pause. "Mr. Wellington, is Elena in some kind of trouble?" "No," I said quietly. "I am." I spent the morning calling every cleaning service in Manhattan, thinking maybe Elena had worked for others besides me. Nothing. I drove to the small grocery store where I knew she sometimes shopped during her lunch breaks, but the owner just shrugged when I showed him Eleanor's photo from last year's Christmas card. "Many people come in here, mister. I don't remember everyone." By noon, I was desperate enough to do something I hadn't done in 20 years. I went to a church. Elena had mentioned going to Mass on Sundays, and there was a small Catholic church about 10 blocks from my apartment. I figured it was a long shot, but I was running out of options. The priest, Father Miguel, coincidentally the same name as Elena's grandson, was a kind man in his 60s who listened patiently as I stumbled through my explanation. "You're looking for Elena Rodriguez," he said thoughtfully. "I know several families with that name in our parish. Can you describe her?" I found myself describing Elena not just physically, but as a person. Her quiet strength, her gentle humor, the way she always hummed while she worked, how she remembered everyone's birthday and left little handwritten notes when she noticed I was stressed. "Ah," Father Miguel smiled. "You mean our Elena? She coordinates our food pantry program. Wonderful woman, very devoted to her family." "That's her. Please, I need to speak with her. I made a terrible mistake." The priest studied my face carefully. "She mentioned yesterday that she had left her job. She seemed very sad about it. Elena doesn't speak ill of people, but I could tell she was hurt. She was here yesterday. She brought her grandson Miguel, he's named after me actually, to our children's prayer group. Poor boy is on crutches from his accident. Elena has been beside herself with worry. The guilt hit me like a physical punch. While I was raging about dishes and dinner parties, Eleanor was dealing with her injured grandson, probably terrified about his recovery, maybe even worried about medical bills. "Father, I need to make this right. Can you help me find her?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I can't give out personal information about parishioners, but..." He glanced around the empty church. "I will tell you that Elena volunteers at Mercy General Hospital on Tuesday afternoons, reading to children in the pediatric ward. Today is Tuesday." I practically ran to my car. Mercy General was on the Lower East Side in a neighborhood I rarely visited. As I walked through the hospital corridors, I felt increasingly out of place in my expensive suit among the families sitting in plastic chairs, looking worried and exhausted. The pediatric ward was on the 5th floor. I approached the nurse's station, my heart pounding. "Excuse me, I'm looking for Elena Rodriguez. I was told she volunteers here." The young nurse smiled. "Oh, Elena. Yes, she's in the reading room with the kids. Down the hall, last door on the right. But visiting hours don't start until..." "I'm not visiting a patient. I need to speak with Elena. It's important." I could hear Elena's voice before I saw her, reading what sounded like a children's story with different voices for each character. Through the glass window, I saw her sitting in a circle with 6 or 7 children, some in wheelchairs, others connected to IV poles. Her face was animated, completely focused on bringing the story to life for these kids who were fighting battles no child should have to face. One of the children, a boy about Jennifer's age with a bandaged head, was laughing at Elena's dramatic interpretation of the big bad wolf. He was leaning against her arm, and she had her free hand resting gently on his shoulder. This must be Miguel, her grandson. I stood there for several minutes, watching Elena give these children something I realized I had never given anyone: her complete, undivided attention and genuine care. When the story ended, and the children were being wheeled back to their rooms, I knocked softly on the door. Elena looked up and saw me through the glass. Her expression didn't change, but I saw her shoulders tense slightly. She said something to Miguel, kissed his forehead, and came to the door. "Mr. Wellington," she said simply, "what are you doing here?" "I came to find you, to apologize, I struggled for words, "to tell you that you were right about everything." We stood in the hallway, surrounded by the sounds of hospital life, and I found myself really looking at Elena for perhaps the first time. She looked tired, older than I remembered, and there were worry lines around her eyes that I had never noticed before. "How did you find me?" "It doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm here, and I'm sorry. Elena, I'm so sorry. If you're feeling the weight of this moment like I was and you want to keep hearing how this story unfolds, tap the red button that says subscribe. It's free and it helps me keep sharing stories that matter." "Mr. Wellington," Elena said quietly, "some apologies come too late." But she didn't walk away, and in that moment I realized this was my chance, maybe my only chance, to become the person my father would have wanted me to be. "Some apologies come too late," Elena repeated, but something in her eyes told me she was willing to listen. We stood in that hospital hallway, surrounded by the beeping of machines and the quiet conversations of worried families, and I realized this was the most important conversation of my life. "Elena, please, just give me 5 minutes." She glanced back toward the reading room where Miguel was gathering his crutches. "I need to get my grandson home. He gets tired easily since the accident." "Then let me drive you, please." Elena studied my face for a long moment, and I could see her weighing her options. Finally, she nodded. "Miguel, come meet Mr. Wellington." The boy hobbled over on his crutches, and I was struck by how much he looked like Elena, the same intelligent eyes, the same quiet dignity. He was wearing a hospital bracelet alongside a colorful one that looked handmade. "Are you Abuela's boss?" he asked in slightly accented English. "I was," I said, kneeling down to his level. "How are you feeling? Your grandmother told me about your accident." "I'm okay. The doctors say I'll be able to play soccer again in a few months." He looked up at Elena. "Abuela reads to us every week. She does all the voices really good." "Really well," Elena corrected gently, but she was smiling. As we walked to my car, I found myself slowing my usual hurried pace to match Miguel's careful steps. The boy chatted about the other children in the ward, about the stories Elena read, about how he wanted to be a doctor when he grew up so he could help kids like his new friends. "Miguel wants to help people," Elena said quietly as we reached the parking garage. "He gets that from his mother. She's a nurse at a clinic in Queens." "That's where you live?" "Queens?" Elena nodded. "Jackson Heights. We've been there for 12 years. Ever since my daughter Carmen got divorced." 12 years. I had known Elena for 8 years and had never once asked where she lived, never inquired about her daughter or grandson beyond the most superficial pleasantries. The magnitude of my self-absorption was staggering. The drive to Queens took 45 minutes in afternoon traffic. Miguel fell asleep in the back seat, and Elena and I sat in an uncomfortable silence for the first part of the journey. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. "I fired you because you cared more about your family than my dinner party," I said. "I was angry at you for being human." Elena didn't respond immediately. She was watching the city pass by outside the window, neighborhoods I had never seen despite living in Manhattan for 15 years. "Mr. Wellington," she said finally, "do you know what I thought about when I got the call about Miguel's accident?" I shook my head. "I thought about you, about how you would react if I left early, about whether you would understand, about how I could explain it in a way that wouldn't make you angry." She turned to look at me. "My grandson was lying in the street, and I was worried about your reaction. That's when I knew I had lost myself somewhere along the way. I'm so sorry, Eleanor. I don't know how to make this right, but I want to try." We pulled up in front of a small apartment building on Roosevelt Avenue. It was clean but clearly working class, a far cry from my Manhattan penthouse. Elena helped Miguel out of the car, and as we stood on the sidewalk, she looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Would you like to come up, meet my daughter?" Carmen Rodriguez Morales was everything I expected Elena's daughter to be. Warm, intelligent, tired from a long day caring for others. She worked as a nurse at a community clinic, and like her mother, she had a gentle strength that was immediately apparent. "So you're the famous Mr. Wellington," she said, not unkindly but with a directness that reminded me of Elena. "My mother has told me a lot about you over the years." "I'm sure she has," I said, feeling suddenly self-conscious in their small but comfortable living room. "Actually," Carmen continued, "she mostly told me good things. How hard you worked, how dedicated you were to your business, how you never forgot to say thank you when she did something special for you." I looked at Eleanor in surprise. After everything I had put her through, she had spoken well of me to her family. "My mother sees the best in people," Carmen added, "sometimes even when they can't see it in themselves." We sat around their small kitchen table, and for the first time in years, I found myself in a real conversation. Carmen told me about her work at the clinic, about the challenges of providing healthcare to undocumented immigrants, about Miguel's dreams of becoming a doctor. Elena made coffee and served homemade cookies, moving around her daughter's kitchen with the same quiet efficiency she had shown in my apartment. "Mr. Wellington," Miguel said, looking up from his homework, "do you have kids?" "I have a daughter, Jennifer. She's 8, like you. Does she like stories? Abuela could read to her sometime." The innocence of the offer, the easy generosity despite everything I had done, nearly broke me. "I think she would love that very much." As the evening progressed, I found myself telling them about Jennifer, about my divorce, about the loneliness I hadn't even admitted to myself. Eleanor listened without judgment, occasionally asking gentle questions that somehow made me dig deeper into truths I had been avoiding. "You know," Carmen said, as she was putting Miguel to bed, "my mother cried last night. I haven't seen her cry since my father died 6 years ago." "Carmen," Elena said quietly, "that's enough." "No, Mama, it's not enough. Mr. Wellington needs to understand what his words did to you. You've worked for him for 8 years, and you've never missed a day, never complained, never asked for anything extra. You've made his life easier in 1,000 ways, and when you needed understanding for one day when your grandson was hurt, he threw you away like you meant nothing." The words hit me harder than any business failure ever had. I looked at Eleanor, at this woman who had quietly held my life together for 8 years while managing her own challenges, her own family, her own dreams that I had never bothered to ask about. "You're right," I said to Carmen. "Your mother deserves so much better from me." Eleanor reached across the table and touched my hand. "Marcus," she said, and I realized it was the first time she had ever used my first name. People make mistakes. The question is what they do after they realize they've made them. What comes next changed everything for me, and to not miss how this ends, tap the subscribe button now. It's free and you'll be with me in every new story I share. "Elena," I said, "I want to offer you your job back. But more than that, I want to change. I want to be the kind of person who deserves your respect, your friendship. And how would you do that?" I took a deep breath. "I don't know yet, but I'd like you to help me figure it out." Elena smiled then, the first real smile she had given me since I found her at the hospital. "Marcus, I'll come back to work for you on one condition. Anything. We have dinner together once a week. You, me, Carmen, and Miguel. A real dinner where we talk about our lives, our families, our dreams, where you put your phone away and just be present with people who care about you. And," Carmen added, "you bring Jennifer sometimes. Miguel would love to have a friend his age." I looked around that small kitchen, at these people who had every reason to hate me, but were instead offering me something I didn't deserve, a chance to be part of a real family, to learn what it meant to care about something beyond profit margins and stock prices. "Yes," I said, "yes to all of it. Yes to all." 6 months later, I was sitting in Elena's kitchen again, watching Jennifer and Miguel work on a school project together, while Elena taught me how to make her famous empanadas. The Hartman deal had fallen through, but a better opportunity had come along, one that allowed me to restructure my company with better work-life balance for all employees. I had learned to say no to weekend meetings, to turn off my phone during dinner, to actually listen when people spoke to me. Elena still worked for me, but our relationship had evolved into something I had never expected: genuine friendship. "You know what the difference is now?" Elena asked me one evening as we watched the children play in the small courtyard behind her building. "What?" "Now when people ask you how you're doing, you have an answer that isn't about work." She was right. I was learning to be happy, not successful, not accomplished, but genuinely happy. And it all started with a woman who had the courage to walk away from a job that was slowly killing her soul, and the grace to give me a chance to find mine. The broken glass in my penthouse had been swept up long ago, but the real cleaning, the clearing away of years of selfishness and isolation, was still a work in progress. And for the first time in my adult life, I was okay with that. Some things are worth taking time to get right.